It's Tuesday, February 24th. I'm Adam Walsh, and this is The Signal. Today on the show, talking about the importance of Memorial University to this province in a time of cuts, downsizing, and reimagining. I've got a panel of professors to talk about how the uncertainty is threatening the university's mandate. I mean, it's thoughts around the mandate, thoughts about possible threats to it, and it's a big discussion on preserving and enhancing the university's contribution to Newfoundland and Labrador beyond, right? Their contribution really to knowledge. So this is the jumping off point, right? Because we've done multiple shows now on Memorial University and what it's going through. And I will note, the House of Assembly is opening next week, and typically, right, the House opens, spring comes, so does the budget, and we're having this discussion as we wait to see, well, what is the provincial government going to do for funding around the university around this time of selling off buildings and shrinking, and like I said, reimagining. I'm going to go to the phone lines first, and then I'll introduce my guests here in studio. I've got three in studio, one on the line. We may even, through the magic of the interwebs, get one more on the line, but we shall see. Barb Neis is on the line, Professor Emeritus, Sociology Department. Barb, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. All right. Thanks. Give me an opening salvo for this discussion, right? Set it up for everyone else.
Okay. Where did this come from?
Yeah. Why is this such an important conversation right now, and why are you so passionate about it? Anyone who knows you knows you're very passionate about Memorial University and education in this province. But tell the rest of the province while we're all listening.
Okay. I've been kind of monitoring what was happening at the university over the last several months. And I've also been talking to a lot of people. And my sense was that, there was a lot happening on the ground in terms of what people were worried about and experiencing among the frontline workers. And we weren't really hearing very much from them. And they also really weren't necessarily having a chance to talk to each other or to talk across units. So they might talk inside their department, but they weren't necessarily talking across units. So the first thing we did was to try and organize a round table at the university called Preserving and Enhancing Memorial University's Contribution to Knowledge. And our first intent was, it was an internal event, although it was open to the public, was to try and, encourage a conversation, to support a conversation among them about what they think Memorial contributes to knowledge, based on their own experience, how this contribution could be threatened in ways we could enhance it in the future. But most of the recent media coverage has really been perspectives from the administrative leadership. And, given how large and complex Memorial is as an institution, we think it's important, and its long history in Newfoundland and its mandate to the people of the province, we think it would be good for the public to have an opportunity to hear a bit more from the people who are on the front lines, who are doing the research, who are doing the teaching, and so on, that are central to the mandate. So we wanted them to have an opportunity, some of them, a few, to talk about their work, about how they think current and past changes, because Memorial's been cutting budgets for years now, how they might affect the university's capacity to achieve its mandate in the future. And just a point, things aren't just changing inside Memorial, they're also changing outside Memorial. We think simply of the example of artificial intelligence, for example, and how the introduction of artificial intelligence is really transforming things, but it's also creating major challenges in the classroom, in peer-reviewed science, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of changes that are going on, and they're experienced by the people on the front lines who have to deal with cascading effects. Anyway, so we wanted Memorial and the public to be able to reflect on not only how the changes that are happening might be undermining our capacity to meet our mandate to the people of the province. After all, we're the only university. But also maybe to reflect on ways we might enhance that capacity in the future, keeping in mind the current financial challenges.
Yeah, it's like looking at What's the fiscal framework? What cards are we being dealt here in this province? What cards are is the university being dealt? How does the university meet the moment of now and also the moments of tomorrow that we're trying to figure out? I'll do a whip round here in the room, and then we'll go back to the phones. Just do me a favor, just each of you, as I go to you, just tell us a bit about yourselves, your specialty. And let's start with a bit on your thoughts on, your concern of this moment. Josh Lepawski, geography professor. Welcome back. How you doing?
Thanks. Very well. Thank you. Yeah. Josh Lepawski. I'm a professor of geography, shockingly, in the Department of Geography, research on the environmental implications of the tech sector and environmental change on the tech sector. I've been, here since 2006, so I've certainly lived and breathed the major shifts that are going on at the university for sure. Yeah, that's me.
Before we go to the others, in the news there, we just heard a bit on the tech sector, the tech ecosystem, and talking about its worth, right? There's venture capital funding. The province has kicked in money on this again, re-upped it in the last round. The initial round for Polaris made money, right, for folks. You had a thought on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great story, right? Of course, more investment into the province. I was just noting the figures that were being quoted there that the local venture capital fund had made $1.50 for every dollar that had been invested into it.
From this, there was 11 years, whenever it was, over a decade ago. For the initial investment, they got $1.50 back from $1 in.
That's right. So 50% return. Well, there have been two studies of the economic impacts of Memorial University, one in 2012, another one in 2021, that show that the university puts over $1 billion back into the provincial economy, or more than $2 billion into the broader economy. And when you do the numbers, that means that for every dollar of public money that goes into the university, a minimum of $2 to $4 come out into the broader economy, which is a major investment by any definition.
Do you think that gets realized enough?
I don't think it does. I think, the sort of standard talking points from especially previous governments is that Memorial is only a cost center, right? It's never treated as an investment, despite the evidence that it from an economic point of view, if that's all you care about, it clearly is an investment.
Professor Chris Parrish is here. How you doing?
I'm good.
Tell us about yourself.
Okay, so my name's Chris Parrish. I work down at the Department of Ocean Sciences at the end of Marine Lab Road in Logie Bay. And my own research is to do with food webs. It's to do with making aquaculture more sustainable. But I work in a place that's really research intensive. And it's got fabulous facilities, aging facilities, but fabulous facilities that we can work on, really important projects as teams. And so we work on the absorption of carbon by the ocean. We work on pollution. We work on fish diseases. We work on ecosystems leading to fisheries. And it's really dependent on the place where we work. And so our concern is very much about people and about infrastructure and maintaining those things.
Okay. Professor Terry-Lynn Young, how are you?
Good. Thanks, Adam. I'm fine.
Well, tell us about your lab.
So my lab is really focused on the conditions that affect families and patients in Newfoundland and Labrador. So we really work on, what the clinicians in the NLHS health system, what they're seeing at the bedside. Then that's fodder for us to investigate further. So I too work in teams. I work with clinicians, clinical scientists, basic scientists that then, take some of those learnings in terms of what the underlying genetics are and grow tissues and even organoids in petri dishes, and to see what is the biological mechanism that's being affected by, mutations that cause disease. And so it's really important for my research and for us as a team in the Faculty of Medicine and in the Faculty of Nursing. We involve all healthcare professionals in that, our research not only matters both to our local families and communities, but it also has impact nationally and internationally.
Yeah, like talk to us briefly, not to go too far into this, but like cardiac deaths and genetics, because it's just such a massively important bit of research that has come from this lab.
Absolutely. And
there's more than just one, but this is just to be specific, sorry.
Yeah, so it's probably the prime example of, when research is collaborative, when it's based on the communities with which we serve, and when it goes over decades and decades and well funded, just what you can do in terms of improving people's lives. So I grew up in Newfoundland. I did all my degrees at Memorial University. I went to do extra training at the University of Washington in Seattle, and I came back to MUN solely to look at the Newfoundland population. One of the projects that I was totally interested in, but felt perhaps I couldn't do much about, was the sudden cardiac death project. And my colleague, Kathy Hodgkinson, followed me around for 9 months and begged me and my lab to look at this, and we did. And we were successful within a matter of a year and a half of really one of the biggest discoveries, perhaps, that, has been in terms of medical genetics, certainly in heart. We discovered a gene and a mutation that's extremely lethal, but there's a treatment that we can do.
They even had a name on it, right?
Yeah, it is. It's ARVC, or arrhythmic right ventricular cardiomyopathy.
But it was like the Newfoundland curse or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's what the families called it, right? And they called it that because if it went untreated, 50% of men by the age of 40 had the unfortunate experience of perhaps their first experience being sudden death. And so you don't come back from that. However, now that we know more about what the gene does, we know who's at risk in families, we can really make sure they come in and get their defibs installed. And that was all a Newfoundland team who not just found the gene, but did the clinical outcomes and clinical take care. And they continue to take care of those families.
Yeah, lives saved.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for that journey, because I think everything that we're going to hear from you folks today, and for everyone on the line, of the difference in research specialties, what you've done over the years, the state of the university with funding, with that conversation, your concerns about the mandate and everything else, all of it ties in together, obviously, for at the end of the 55 minutes of the show, everyone can kind of leave listening to it with hopefully some better ideas for this part of the conversation from the faculty and research side. Let's go to the phones. We've got, I think in Europe somewhere, Nancy Dahn is on the line, professor at MUN's music department and violinist. Hello, Nancy.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for coming on, loud and clear. So give everyone a bit more of an introduction on yourself and just your thoughts around where things are right now as it relates to the music school.
Sure. So yes, I'm the violin and viola professor at Memorial, and I've been around a long time. I've been here for 31 years. I was hired to actually build the string program from sort of ground zero, and I've taught over 100 violinists and violists since that time, who've been incredibly important in our culture as orchestral players and chamber musicians and private and school music teachers and music industry professionals, etc. The big concern, I think, at the School of Music right now with the new budget model is that the School of Music, as a professional school, which trains professional musicians, is going to find it very hard to offer sort of the foundations of a music degree, which is one-on-one private instruction. And that sounds really expensive, and it is. I mean, but that is how professional musicians have been taught for centuries. And so we're very concerned about how we're going to manage without additional support, and how we're going to serve the people of this province and provide a really worthwhile school of music.
What gets lost if we can't do that anymore?
Well, we're not competitive with other schools. It's the expected and accepted norm for a Bachelor of Music program that we have one-on-one private instruction weekly. And it's, required. Music is a really complex, very individualized art form, and it requires that kind of approach. They had a similar, at the Queen's University School of Music and Drama, they faced a budget cut and had to reduce their applied lessons by 50%. So they had, instead of weekly lessons, every other week or something like that. And the school has been left in crisis, the School of Music. And students there can just go down the highway a few 100 kilometers to maybe another school. But here in this province, that's not an option. And we need to be thinking about what our mandate is as a university, as a comprehensive university, and whether we are in fact really delivering the essentials of a Bachelor of Music program in our professional school.
So President Morrison on this show a couple of weeks back talked about that term, right? Comprehensive university. It was one of those things that was like, I didn't know it until I started learning it with everything going on at the university. Okay, so comprehensive university, you have what Nancy's saying there. Who wants to jump in on either your own departments or to build on some of what she's saying?
Well, I'll jump in. Yeah. So, comprehensive is really important with what Nancy's talking about there. I mean, there's these cliches out there about, maybe the arts and culture is, sort of fluffy or what have you. But, to bring it back to the example of the tech sector again, if you're a video game maker and you need scores for your video games, you need professional musicians for that. You want it to have a fantastic visual appeal for the people playing it so that it makes money. You need artists and art directors for that. So this whole idea that, culture doesn't contribute is just, we need to just get rid of that idea. It's just silly. Yeah. The comprehensiveness of the university is crucial in so many ways. I might describe it as, the university really creates a real kind of infrastructure that helps us live together, like live lives that are worth living, whether that's not dying from sudden cardiac arrest or enjoying products and services like video games, right? That all comes out of this university. So that's maybe some of the ways I would talk about why comprehensiveness matters.
Anyone else here who wants to build on it? As you both look at each other and give some nods, come on, jump in.
I mean, I'll jump in on the mandate just a bit as well, too. I mean, that gets talked about as if we understand what that means. Sometimes it gets described as the special obligation to the province, which sounds good, but what does that mean? Well, I mean, the values on which this university is founded are literally etched in stone, right? Mm-hmm. It is a memorial to the sacrifice of people who died in the wars, right? That memorial is the freedom to learn, that their sacrifice will not be forgotten, right? Yeah. Well, freedom is something unfettered, unrestricted, right? That's what the principle on which this university is founded. And that has been codified into the law that governs this university, which parts of it talk about what will be taught and researched. And those parts of the legislation that bring that value into, like, make it concrete, speak to teaching in all branches of knowledge and providing the infrastructure to do research and teaching in all branches of knowledge. And it's those values that are at stake as these cuts have continued well over a decade now. The university's budget is now down, at least 47%. It's been cut since 2014. So the institution really crossed some thresholds some years ago that we're only now sort of hearing the more concrete effects of, with program pauses and closures and, these kinds of issues.
Yeah, and before I go back to the others, because I've heard that over the last couple of years too, right? Hosting, having, cause oftentimes, like today, I mean, I know today we're talking specifically about Memorial University. Oftentimes I've got folks who are teaching next door in here talking about whatever it is their specialties are about. And over the last few years, you hear profs talk about individual departments being like, I don't know if we can attract talent, and wondering this and that, and having, and also about the infrastructure and everything else going on. And so that's kind of like always been sitting there in my mind. Mm-hmm. And then in the last year, things have moved, things have changed. So like, when did you start to kind of notice, like, give some more specific examples as well around like what you think has been lost that people like myself and others listening might only be realizing now?
I'll give you a concrete example from my own department, not because it's special, but because it's an example that cuts across the university. So I'm in the geography department. We're no longer able to offer our geographic information science certificate. Why is that? We used to have 3 professors who could teach the courses required for that. Now we have 1.5. You might ask, how do you have half a professor? One of the people is cross-appointed in another department, but that means that they have teaching, research, and service duties divided across 2 departments, so they can only offer half as much to each as they did before. Doesn't mean we can't teach our GI science courses anymore, but we don't have enough people to offer the additional teaching that would go into the certificate. So that's gone now. Geographic information science, for anyone who doesn't know that, has applications in everything from real estate to wildlife management to urban planning to, if anyone is familiar with the location services on your phone, that's thanks to geographic.
All that.
It's all that. Yeah.
Right, because part of the conversation now, you'll hear it's like, okay, this is being cut because there's not enough uptake on it. But and sure, to some things maybe, but also if you're losing positions and you can't offer something.
I think that's a really important point.
It's more nuance is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, for sure. That's a really important point that has really not been, I think, communicated well recently, that somehow these program pauses and changes are a consequence of declining enrollments. In some cases, maybe, but to frame it that way is to ignore the last 10 years of constant cuts where you get faculty complement, such as the one I was just talking about, cut in half. And of course, enrollments go down in something like the Geographic Information Science Certificate because it's not being offered because there's not enough people to do it. Yeah. So the program pauses and closures are a consequence of previous cuts, not what's leading to the need to get rid of things now.
Chris, I'm just looking at some of the notes I have on you in your department, right? And just your thoughts on, I'm just thinking of Munn selling off buildings, like as you've been kind of watching this, where have your thoughts gone on the future for your department and also the university?
It is obviously a big concern because we're down to 10 faculty in the department, resident in the Department of Ocean Sciences. And as the numbers decrease, we sort of wonder about our longevity. We have kind of expensive facilities that require uptake and require modifications, require upkeep, require cleaning out. We have seawater that goes to multiple buildings that allows us to do all the experiments that we can do, deep water fish that require pressure and temperature control and all that kind of stuff. And when we have lots of people, we're able to bring in research money. And so we can leverage good facilities to do good research. And so we need to keep those facilities going. And so, it's a concern. We have a very good dive team. These are people that know exactly where to get which kind of organisms and bring them back alive for us to work on. We also have, and this is more of a national thing, we go out on ships, we collect samples at sea, and so concern about getting to platforms. We do work in the Arctic, we do work in the Labrador Sea, and so we have to use Coast Guard vessels. And so the whole infrastructure thing is terribly important to what we do, and that is our concern, is that we maintain it.
So I'm looking at, I think it is from the Gazette, but it says, among the world's best, Time magazine ranks Memorial University among the top 300 universities, which, by the way, is actually, it's noteworthy, folks, if you don't know. I know some people are like, what do you mean, top 300? No, globally, like this thing, we're talking, if you're looking at 1,000 universities and to be in the top 300, that is noteworthy. How important is reputation for universities? when it comes to attracting talent and making lists like the one that we're talking about here.
Oh yeah, no, it's for research. It's absolutely critical that we have that. We bring in grants. We are able to attract good students. We're able to do good research, and it can be from an honors student to a master's student to a PhD student to a postdoctoral fellow, and they come to work with us because they know that they're going to get a good education.
So then do you worry, like when it's the headlines of reimagining, shrinking, cut, selling off buildings, and there's more to it, right? Like it is the I can lean in on the reimagining side of it with the state of post-secondary looking around the world of what universities are having to grapple with. But when those headlines come out, what do you think that does to prospective talent, especially at a time when we're trying to reverse brain drain from the United States, given that whole other conversation?
Well, at the moment, I mean, we're not in the business of even bringing in any new faculty, right? And so the faculty are aging, and so our concern is that we will get below critical mass. And that's not just doing the research, that's also doing the teaching. We have programs that are undergraduate and graduate level that we need to be able to deliver. And so we need to have a critical mass of people and a critical mass of infrastructure in order to continue forward.
Terry-Lynn, what about yourself on that international level of the importance of research?
Yes, so the area I work in is genomics. And last year, Genome Canada did a fabulous job. They came out and got $175 million from the federal government to really look at genomics across multiple sectors, including human health. And I've been in this role as a professor and getting research grants for 2 decades now. And over the last particularly 5 years, it really is getting harder and harder to land national and internationally competitive grants. And once you start to, not be able to renew a grant, even the first time, you start to lose the institutional memory, whether that's a research assistant you've had for a long time. We build teams over time, and once you start to lose your funding like that, you lose momentum. You can no longer leverage all the investment that's been done in the infrastructure at Memorial University. Now, this is a really exciting time for genomics, and particularly human genomics, as our whole healthcare system is going to be turned on its head. It's going to be big data. This big data is going to be sequencing all of our genomes, and then we're going to use and develop at universities, at research institutes, in private companies, the AI tools to maximize, what we can do with that information so we can better treat, diagnose, prognose, and sometimes cure diseases, whether they're, occur in newborns like metabolic diseases, or whether they occur in, the aging population with cardiovascular diseases, cancer, and things like that. But to do that, we actually need to increase the number of graduate students. We need to increase the amount of research we're doing. Now, one of the other issues that has come up with particular funders, and I'll just mention Genome Canada, this is just how they operate, right? For every dollar you pull down from Genome Canada, they really want you to come to the table with an extra dollar of cash, whether that's from a health foundation, whether it's from a private company. And so there's a co-investment, which is fine. In Atlantic Canada, and particularly in Newfoundland, we don't really have the deep provincial pockets to be pulling down that matching money. So the first round they had of the Genome Canada opportunities for personalized medicine, there were several research teams in Atlantic Canada, myself included. We had a team in there who made it through the first stage because our science was excellent. But we actually couldn't come up with the matching funds in cash. We could leverage our infrastructure. We could leverage even bloodletting centers from Newfoundland and Labrador Health Services. We really had buy-in from our healthcare systems and our leaders, which was phenomenal. But because we couldn't come to table dollar for dollar, we were not competitive in the final stage, so we lost out. So since that time, I've had conversations with Genome Canada. We're also pulling together in terms of Atlantic Canada. We have other leaders coming to the table to say, let's not let that happen next time. Perhaps we can have the 4 provincial governments, between Nova Scotia, PEI, Newfoundland, and New Brunswick. Maybe we need to come together and have a singular fund that as a Atlantic Canada team, we can make sure we get a piece of that $175 million. And I'll tell you why it's important, because the variants that we see in, the populations that turn into genetic tests, at the moment, they're basically variants that we find in white population and Northern Europeans, because those are the folks who have been involved in having their genomes tested and in genetics research for decades. Well, there's a huge issue with equity. We are, our rural populations, our remote communities already have disparities in access to health care. And this gap is just going to widen unless we, quickly become part of the national personalized medicine initiative to really also sequence our genomes and figure out which of those variants may cause sudden cardiac death, and perhaps which of those variants means you shouldn't take a certain drug, because if you do, you're 10% of the population who will have an adverse drug reaction. So it's hugely important that at this moment we actually lean into this and not back away from the opportunity, because researchers care. That's where we are with human genomics, and certainly NLHS recognizes that, and they're partnering with us.
So then, if they recognize it, do you think the Premier's office recognizes it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think, the Premier's office certainly recognizes the importance of remote and rural communities.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be hopefully a huge part of how we move in the next 5 to 10 years in terms of closing the gap in terms of health equity.
Barb Neis, I'll go back onto the phone line for yourself. Anything from the conversation speak to you on, feel free to respond to any of the points so far, and then I'll push the conversation forward a little bit.
Sure. So, I think part of what you're hearing is, the importance of research that's done at Memorial, and then the relationship between research and training. And my background is, I did a lot of research over a long period of time. I'm still wrapping up projects 6 years after retirement. So, and I think that with research, first of all, we need to be able to access national granting funds. And that's not easy, and it's particularly hard in some disciplines, but you need a whole bunch of capacity in order to do that. We need that capacity in terms of, people with strong backgrounds. We need to be bringing in excellent researchers, but we all want them to not just be doing research. We want them to be doing at least some research, a good solid amount, on Newfoundland and Labrador. And a lot of universities faculty come from someplace else, so why would they change their careers, the direction of their careers, and focus on this particular place? And I think, the importance of leverage funding, of having pots of money, of having opportunities for people who are faculty to meet people in the wider community, all of those things have certainly played a critical role in my career, which, went from small, local, often university or church-based grants and so on, up through into, major national grants and programs of research. So, and we need graduate programs. We have to have the capacity to basically staff with graduate students, the kinds of projects we want to do. And, part of what was making me uncomfortable about what the university's been doing is they've cut the Office of Public Engagement, which was a key mechanism for people across many different disciplines to get out into the community and to engage with people in the community and to identify relevant local issues and concerns that are researchable, that they could use as a sort of starting point. There were small grant funds that were available through the university, through public engagement, through the Harris Center. All of that's been cut, and so that is a major threat. It's a threat, I think, to research on Newfoundland and Labrador that is relevant to this place.
So the university will come back. I asked President Morrison this a couple of weeks ago, and the answer was that, well, yes. The St. John's office was cut for public engagement. The Harris Center was cut. The response is but that work can still be done, and there's an Office of Public Engagement at Grenfell, which is focusing on some of the connections for rural Newfoundland and Labrador for what you're talking about. Does that not get folks there?
Does that solve the problem? I don't think that it does. I don't think that, a small unit in Grenfell, that has been given 1 year of supplementary funding, can pick up essentially all of the public engagement work and so on, leadership work. I mean, Memorial was a leader in public engagement internationally, and it was recognized, and it was bringing in funding through that unit and through the Harris Center. So we lost that. I don't think that a small unit at Grenfell that doesn't know its future and isn't connected to all of the other groups also in St. John's and all of the wider population in our area can solve this problem. I just don't buy it. I just don't think it's going to work.
All right, so let me move back to the guests in studio and also to Nancy on the line, and I'll have another question for you shortly, Barb. As we move forward, right? So we're looking at the fiscal reality of now. We've got a budget coming. There's everything you've laid out about your backgrounds and your specialties and some of your thoughts on what's important. What do you want to see happen? Like, what needs to happen in order, if we're looking at the start of this conversation and looking at preserving and enhancing Memorial University's contribution to Newfoundland and Labrador knowledge and all of that, what do you want to see? Josh?
Yeah, well, I mean, some of it is very blunt and basic, which is, funding the university sufficiently. Again, making that line that has been going down for 10 plus years start going up for a little bit. Yeah. Then
that's the crystal clear message. Sorry to interrupt. I mean, that's the message, because we can kind of dip into different departments and research, and all that is really important stuff. But getting down to the brass tacks of the matter, that's the message I think that a lot of people can kind of okay, yeah, funding needs to be restored. That makes sense to a lot of folks,
Yeah. And I think it's really important for people outside of the immediate university community to understand that the kinds of cuts and whatnot that we're seeing today are a consequence of thresholds we crossed a few years ago. Yeah. So this is going to continue unless that budget line starts going up. This coming fall, the first year math classes are doubling from 150 students to 300 students. There's only 2 classrooms on the campus that can handle that, and that means holding those classes at 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. and that's it. That's going to be a major shift in the kind of teaching that can happen in a crucially important set of classes, that first year math. So, another piece of this besides the funding is also decision making. Memorial is one of the, if not the only university in Canada where the people who deliver the core mandate of the university, the teaching and research, are not permitted on the Board of Regents. Now, that changed sort of as a consequence of the strike, and really just what has happened is 1 seat out of 30 has been now devoted to 1 member of teaching staff.
How many would you like to see? And why is that so important?
I mean, I'd love to see at least a majority. Why is it so important? Well, I mean, the Board of Regents, again, this can get into insider baseball really quickly, but the Board of Regents is the decision-making body that makes all of the financial sides of the decisions about the university. They are also, the majority of the seats on the board are appointed by government. Yep. So the members of the board now and in the past are all government appointees. It was the Board of Regents that approved things like executive decision maker salaries, that approved things like purchasing what is now, for a little while longer, the Signal Hill campus, the Geo Center, and so forth, with no input from the people who deliver the core mandate of the university, teaching and research, even though those financial decisions, of course, have massive implications for the allocation of the university budget.
Now, I'm looking at the list now for the Board of Regents, and some of these are involved members of the community as well. So
totally.
Even though they're chosen by governments of the time, these are folks who are working, living,
absolutely, most
of them living in the community. Anyways, there's one that stands out who visits often. But people who are have a vested interest in Newfoundland and Labrador and the community. So
right.
What's wrong with that group compared to like, if things were even out a bit more?
I think, to me, first of all, there's nothing inherently wrong with that group at all.
Sorry for the poor phrasing there.
No, that's fine. I mean, this is part of what a public university is about having members of the public be part of the decision-making structure. But that decision-making structure is separate at MUN. You've got Board of Regents and you've got Senate.
Yeah.
And the kinds of financial decisions that have been made by the board in the past have had direct impacts on, say, increasing the footprint of the university with no apparent thought to how that's going to impact really basic budget items like maintenance budgets.
Yeah.
Where now literally our deferred maintenance budget is hundreds of millions of dollars larger than the total operating grant of the university. That's shockingly going to have consequences for the ability to deliver the teaching and research as that budget declines.
And it's such a big part of the conversation as they're trying to shrink. So years of building out and expanding.
Right.
And now it's like, well, but now we're shrinking. And you're like, but hold on now. We could have been waving the flags around this and alerting it. And we have been.
As we have.
Yeah,
to be frank.
Okay.
Right? So coming from now a faculty perspective and the faculty union.
Yeah.
This is something that the faculty union has been red flagging literally for years. I mean, the whole decade of these cuts that have been happening. And those, despite the waving of the flags, that was always pushed to the side, where, a cynical side of me wants to say that, vanity over values were being pushed through decisions to purchase realty rather than focus on that teaching and research mandate of the university.
Let's go to the lines. Nancy, we'll go back to you on the line. Any thoughts? Just doesn't have to be about the music department, but anything from what Josh or the others are saying there.
Well, just to go back to the sort of engagement piece that Barb was bringing up, I mean, I just want to stress to our listeners today and remind us all, how interconnected and interdependent the School of Music is with the many cultural institutions in our province. And, this is just a profoundly rich and proud musical heritage that we're part of here, really an extraordinary place. And I think, we're very concerned about what we might be risking by not funding to a reasonable degree the School of Music. And I just also want to, remind people, the NSO, for example, is made up of current School of Music players. So when you're hearing that wonderful orchestra, it's sounding wonderful because it's being supplemented by some marvelous students. And think about, our incredible graduates that make up the Shalloway, and the kind of impact that has on our community. It's just the reason why people love living in Newfoundland and Labrador is because of these cultural institutions which are growing out of the School of Music and continue to be connected to and interdependent with the school.
Yeah, I mean, so often I'll hear folks talk about the celebration of the musical abilities in this province, the storytelling abilities in this province, and it's, anyways, just interesting observation for the conversation we are having right now. Chris, any other thoughts from you just on the push forward and what you would like to see, whether it's like around preserving or enhancing some of the education abilities of the university?
So I guess in the short term, I think we'd like to have some clarity. So we end up in sort of faculty meetings where we discuss, we've got this exciting new program that we'd like to bring out. We would like to have this new degree program. There are opportunities to apply for different types of faculty positions at the national level where the funding might come from outside of the university. And when we're in a position where we don't know where we're going, we're concerned about collapse of programs, we're concerned about not having our infrastructure funding, we just feel like we're waiting to be able to, we could do something, but why put all that effort in? develop a new academic program when half of us are going to be retired in the next 5 years.
So do you not see an end in sight, though? Because there are the steps being put in place by the administration of just some of the downsizing that's going to happen and everything else, and then waiting now for the provincial budget and perhaps some clarity. There have been town hall meetings with staff. What more kind of, how else does clarity get delivered for you, given everything that's going on?
Well, at least we'd know the worst case scenario, and then we can work with that. We know that if departments are going to be melded, we know if there's going to be lack of funding for certain aspects of what we do. At least we'll know what we can go for and how to do it. But obviously, in the long term, the sort of work that all the people down at the Marine Lab do, all the 50 graduate students, all the postdoctoral fellows, it's something that's so important to this province.
Yeah.
And I can't believe that we're going to let that die on the vine.
Terry-Lynn Young, Professor Young, any other thoughts?
Yeah, just to add to what my colleagues are talking about here, I mean, just a recognition that the university is an economic driver across many sectors. Our politicians are often university graduates, sometimes just not undergraduate degrees, but graduate degrees, our former premiers. We solve problems in our society by doing the research to figure out what the problem is and what teams we need to bring around those problems. And given the sort of the state of the world that's in, surely to God, we need a more well-educated publics. And we need, not only better health care, but we need a focus on prevention, which is where human genomics, that's going to really help us, I think, out of a jam that we see with increasing and rising costs of health care, is to start to go on the preventative side of that and see, treat people who need to be treated, but for God's sake, prevent what we can, because we're diagnosing better, accurately, early, and we can, tailor clinical treatment, management, and even therapies to what people actually are at risk of.
Do you ever wonder or fear that previous narratives under the management of the university is kind of getting everything you're talking about being tossed out with the bathwater? Because you look at, for example, the provincial election that came. I moderated a few panels, and one of the things that came up on the panels is bloat, mismanagement, AG reports, people saying from both the current governing party and also the former governing party, people talking about the university has to get its house in order because things have gone, and it's the examples of the chocolate boxes, the furniture, and buildings and everything else, some of which we've already touched on today. But is that narrative from the administrative past hurting the reality and the future now?
I mean, for sure, because it becomes what the university is, unfortunately, it becomes its reputation, right, to a broader public. So, I mean, the figure from the AG report about senior executives at the university being paid 90% or more, 97% more than their provincial counterparts. Those people the AG is talking about, those aren't the frontline workers, the professors, the contract faculty who actually deliver the core mandate of the university, teaching and research.
To go back to your previous point about the Board of Regents and more representation to
which approve those salaries.
Yeah,
exactly.
Just connecting everything here.
That's right. So again, it comes back to that question of governance, right? Governance of the university, making that governance more democratic and more public, frankly, for the public university.
So then, as you look at the provincial budget, there's going to be discussions after this. What has to happen?
Please increase the budget for Memorial University. That's what has to happen. Yeah. I mean, to be blunt about it, right?
Because one of my questions to President Morrison was like, well, how do you, and I was like, excuse me for the dumb question, but how do you get money? And it's you get it from students paying tuition or you get it from funding.
Yeah, and that's the tuition issue, I think, is really important. I'm noticing we're getting down to the last few minutes. There are all sorts of important, I think, conversations to be had here around tuition. I'm going to frame it this way to, again, bring it back to the tech sector. One of the founders of Verafin is on record talking about how what if you will, saved his undergraduate career was the small classes at MUN, because he self-described himself as a sort of an average student. And what also helped was free tuition and a stipend, a no strings attached stipend that were paid to students who went to university. Those are wildly different conditions than what students experience now, and are, if you have, children who are coming to Memorial and are yourself, say, an alumni of Memorial, the conditions that your kids are coming into are radically different than what you experienced. Your tuition is going to be, you're going to be literally paying 2 to 4 times more to get less. That's the reality of where we are. And that is, almost 100% a function of 10 plus years of cuts to the operating budget of the university.
Professor Chris Parrish, final thoughts from you today.
I think sort of one of the things, building on what Josh was saying, is that in the university is to have the hands-on experience. And I think that we have labs, we can go to see, we actually do things and we learn things by doing, not necessarily by sitting in a lecture room with 150, 250 students. This is, I think, the small class size and the hands-on, being able to come out of university with demonstrable skills that don't come from a book or looking at a screen. I think it's terribly important.
Professor Terry-Lynn Young.
Yeah, so I would just add to that, it certainly is the hands-on skills for the labs that we have at Memorial University, no matter, which unit you're talking about. And it's that hands-on, I think, that gives students the confidence that, they can go out in the world and find their own place. When I went to Seattle, I was surprised that, I became sort of the troubleshooter in the lab because I had so much hands-on experience as an undergraduate and a graduate at Memorial University, which surprised me because I thought going to such a big university, I
you're
would
going to
be
be fancy.
disadvantaged, but I wasn't. And so I that's where we need to be. Thank you.
Professor Nancy Dahn on the line. Final thoughts.
Yeah, just going back to the comprehensive university idea. That would mean having a Bachelor of Music program that's a part of a comprehensive university available to all the people of this province. And without that one-on-one instruction and an expensive program, then it really turns into a different degree altogether, a Bachelor of Arts degree, maybe with a music focus. And we're going to lose a lot of incredibly talented young future professional musicians to other parts of the country.
Thank you for that. Professor Emeritus Barb Neis, final thoughts for today? I had to use the title there. I was like, what do I call Barb? Okay.
Again, I think part of the point here is, everybody's dealing with a high level of uncertainty. We don't really know what's going on. But, when I look at other universities where they've implemented, for example, this activity-based budget model that they've brought in the middle of a fiscal crisis at Memorial, what I see is waves of program cuts. And program cuts, they don't happen right away. They happen over time. In a sense, the budget model can engineer, in a sense, low enrollments, and then low enrollments become the rationale for why you close them. If we have less programming at Memorial, it's going to mean that because we have to serve the whole province. We're not serving a specialized group of people who specialize in just a few things, right? So that means that people who don't fit in what will be a narrower range of programming are going to have to go elsewhere in order to do their university. So we freeze tuition here, and then our own people in our own province are forced to send their kids someplace else because we don't have the programming we would need as a comprehensive university to actually meet the needs of the whole community, not just a few.
Barb, thanks. Professor Lepawski, final 30 seconds to you to bring it home. Any final thought?
I think I've done a lot of talking,
Right.
But I guess my thanks to you and the Signal for sure to, get these conversations going in the broader public.
Okay, folks. Look, thank you so much. Barb, thanks for getting the show on the go. I appreciate it. I appreciate this discussion. Thank you very much, folks. That is it for today's show. If you got thoughts about the future of the university for us, the Signal signal@cbc.ca. Or you can call the Signal line and leave a message, 709-576-5260. As we look ahead, so like I said with that, you can get in touch about any show we do or suggestions for future shows. I'm cooking up a few from listener suggestions as we speak. Looking ahead for this week, tomorrow, this is Newfoundland and Labrador. We're playing a couple of the most recent podcasts. We've got a pop culture panel towards the end of the week. Thursday this week, we're doing a bit on climate change in a time of and climate action in a time of Donald Trump. So don't miss these shows. Cheers.